report for the fiscal year. So that would be ending June 30th. So that you should definitely have that one. And of course, that is what your tax return would be prepared off of. But you should have reports for the board every month, those reports at minimum, plus an accounts receivable and an accounts payable. So the board can understand, you know, what bills are out there that have to be paid and what the incoming receivables are that you're waiting on. You should be reviewing those each month, especially your receivables, to see where people are in paying their dues. As a rule of thumb, if anybody usually gets to 90 days, collection past 90 days is pretty difficult. So, you know, the sooner that you can identify it and reach out to folks in our particular club, once they start getting past 30 days, we will reach out to them. Hey, how's things going? Is there something you need help with? Because a lot of times people, they don't want to reach out. They're embarrassed. They don't feel comfortable. So if we reach out to them, it makes them a little more comfortable, and we're able to work out, you know, a plan with them to make payments so they can continue to pay us and to be active and, you know, feel positive. So those are the 4 reports that at most or at minimum you should be giving to your board. As far as where and how are financial records kept, so as the treasurer, and I don't know if you change year to year, but you need to make sure that you're keeping your financial records for 7 years. Keeping them for 7 years, and then you can, you know, go ahead and dump the last year off every year as it moves forward. The IRS and the Franchise Tax Board now are accepting electronic copies, so you don't need to keep all that paper. I would recommend that, you know, maybe at the end of every year, if you have someone in your club or you're one that wants to do it, basically scan in all your documents, all your bank statements, all your financial statements, and just keep them electronically. Your tax returns you should keep also electronically, but you should also keep the hard copy of your return. So basically that would pretty much be the only sheet, if you will, or hard copy stuff you need to keep. Everything else can be scanned in, all your, you know, your receipts and all of that kind of stuff. So that should save a lot of space for people in keeping your records. Okay, so the next area, regulatory reporting. So as nonprofits, you're going to have your tax returns that are due every single year. So you need to make sure you get those into the Franchise Tax Board and to the Internal Revenue Service. Every 2 years or every other year, you have a statement of information that is filed with the Secretary of State, and that is on the basis that you are a corporation registered in the state of California. The reason I make that distinction is because some of our clubs out there are filed under a group exemption of Rotary International. If you're filing under the group exemption of Rotary International, then you're not going to be listed in the California Secretary of State database. So you don't need to worry about sending in a statement of information. So if anyone is confused about that, 2 ways you can find out. One, you can call and ask me because I can tell you. Or the second way is look at your tax return, the federal return, and on the upper right-hand side, like 3 lines down, you'll see a little box and it says group exemption code. And if you have that code in there, which I believe is 0563, that means that you're organized under Rotary International exemption. So you won't have to file the forms and everything. So those are the reports that are due. Also, one of the things that, I don't know if you're preparing your returns yourself or whether you're having an outside professional firm do it for you, but if you are registered here in the state of California with the Secretary of State, have a corporation here, one of the other forms that has to be filed every year with the Attorney General's office, it's called an RRF-1. And that is required for the nonprofits in the state of California. And basically what you're reporting at the end of the year is what your assets are, that your organization is in existence. It's got probably 12 to 15 questions on there about different activities that you did through the year. So that needs to be filed with the $10 fee that goes along with it. And it's out there on the Registry of Charitable Trusts. So folks who want to look up our organizations can go out there and see that we have registered with them. This is especially important if you want to do a raffle. Because in the state of California, when you do a raffle, you have to register with the Attorney General's office, the Registry of Charitable Trusts, to get a raffle authorization, and then you have to file a report after it's done. So really important you file that RRF1 and that you're not delinquent, because if you decide to do this raffle and you're delinquent, they won't issue you the approval for the raffle. Okay, next is your books being reviewed. It is recommended that every year that your books are reviewed. Some clubs, what they do is they have a separate committee that, and again, this is also according to your bylaws as well, but they'll have a separate committee that will be assigned to go and review the books for the year. And this committee would not include the treasurer or anybody who has worked on the books. It would be an independent group of people who would go in and review the financials for that year. In case of the district, we have a independent outside firm that reviews the books and all the financials that I've prepared for the district, and they sign off on them. And then, of course, the tax return is prepared. So you should do that at least once a year, just to make sure that everything is as you thought it should be. It also makes it a prudent activity so that people can see as the board that they're taking their fiduciary responsibility and they're making sure that the funds that they're getting in are going to the places that the funds are supposed to be going to. So once a year is the recommendation on that. Your treasurer's role in risk management, the role is to, look out there, determine what risk is potentially out there. Obviously, nobody could foresee, COVID-19, back in January, February, but certainly as things started in March and April, okay, we knew that things were going to change. So as a treasurer, you would be looking at your club saying, okay, we have these expenses that are coming up. We, again, back to what are we going to do for our fundraiser? These type of risks, these are the things that you need to look at in advance. Look at your portfolio, make sure things are steady where they need to be. Make sure that no drastic actions are being taken. Like for example, a club I talked to, some of their board were like, oh my gosh, the stock market's going to crash. We want to pull all our money out right now. These are the type of things that you want to educate people on. Bring in experts if you need to make sure that everyone understands what's going on. So being forward-looking, forward-thinking, taking into account where do our risks lie and what do I need to advise the board of and what do we need to advise the club of. Okay, so here's some best practices. And again, these are just best practices over time that different nonprofits and people have done, and these are recommendations for you. So make sure that obviously you're collecting and recording your dues from members. And, please, in that, we're saying make sure that you have a member name and you're recording it against that member so that you know each person that has paid. Believe it or not, there are some folks out there that will just collect it in total and say, okay, we had this number of members and here is the pot and all the money was collected. But they don't keep record of each individual person. So since you're probably already keeping track of people from a attendance standpoint, keep track of their dues also from a member standpoint. make sure you make your deposits and pay your bills timely. I know that sounds like a crazy thing, but it's actually, people can hold on to checks, I mean, for a month and 2 months. I've seen that happen. You want to make sure that you do it, especially after 6 months, checks will usually become stale dated from the bank, and then now you're into a situation where having to collect. And this is another area for your board. You should be seeing each month income coming into your bank accounts. If you're looking at those financial statements and you don't see, you know, money attributed to your dues coming in each month, or, you know, if you've got pledges or contributions, whatever it might be that are coming in, this is a way to see that, oh, hey, maybe something's not happening right. Maybe our treasurer or whoever's assigned to it isn't making the deposits. So make sure you do that and pay your bills timely. Make sure that you're reconciling all bank accounts monthly. There are clubs out there, believe it or not, who they do not reconcile their bank accounts. They just put everything in there and that's it. They don't reconcile the account. You need to reconcile the account to make sure that, you know, bills are being paid and checks are actually cashed, and that you're not going to run into a collection issue later because a check got lost in the mail or whatever it might be. And of course, if you're running fundraisers or anything like that, that you're getting money from those things and from your pledges. So make sure you reconcile your bank accounts monthly. Maintain a system of checks and balances. Again, that goes back to separating out, you know, who puts deposits in, who reconciles the bank account, you know, who's picking up the mail. I mean, just for the safety of the person who's doing it, you would not want one person to do all of those things. You want separate hands touching it. So again, there's that check and balance system. Work with your committees to ensure that the budgets are adhered to and report variances to the board. So when you do your financial reports, you know, take time to look at them. Why is the variance there? Is the variance there because you're going over budget? Is the variance there because your board decided that they wanted to spend extra money on this, but they're going to save on another area? Put all of those things into your report or into an executive summary so that there's history. So when someone goes back and looks at it in the past, they can say, oh, they made a conscious decision to do this, or yes, we're over budget because we decided to do this. It makes it much easier, and especially from a historical standpoint, if you're trying to budget going forward, you know what those variances are. And if anyone comes in to look at your financials, and when you share it with your club, then you can explain to them why you went over budget, or maybe you had a special project and you can let them know, hey, we're taking funds from this project and we're going to put it over here. Keeping your members informed is really important. It's obviously we're all working for the same good. They're working very hard. They really want to hear, where's our money going to? How is it working? What great things have we done in the community? So this is an easy way for you to keep track of that and to report it. Make sure that you're providing a budget to actual report for the board every month. Again, that way they can see where they're at according to their budget. If there is a trend that something is not being spent, they can make sure that, you know, hey, we need to spend this and do what we need to do, or if they're overspending. So make sure you have that report. And then, of course, manage within the budget. I mean, obviously, that's what we all want to do, manage within our budget and make sure that we utilize our funds and get it back into our communities and into the hands of those that need it. And then also help prepare a budget for your successor. You know, you hopefully have, you know, been doing the treasurer job, maybe hopefully for more than 1 year. A lot of clubs take the position of they want to bring a treasurer on and it's for 3 years. The first year is to get sort of your feet wet, to observe a little. The second year, you're working more hand in hand with the treasurer, doing more of what has to be done. And then the third year, you're on your own and you're working with the people that are coming up. So it's sort of like a 3-year succession plan. So help them prepare that budget, share with them what you've known, the anomalies, the things they need to look out for. It will make for a smooth transition from year to year. Make sure that you're always separating 2 separate bank accounts, like I said, for club and foundation. Make sure that there's the processes in for receiving funds and dispersing them, as we spoke of earlier. Make sure that you're adhering to the laws regarding donated funds and reporting. So in this particular area, remember that 501c4s, your club, taking donations are not tax deductible. So they're really not a donation. So if you want something to be tax deductible, if you have a foundation, most clubs will have donations made to the foundation because that's a 501c3, and those donations are a tax deductible expense to the donor, less any type of benefit that they got from that. So to clarify that, let's say, for example, you are doing a fundraiser and you have a dinner and you're selling dinner tickets for $50 and the dinner was $25. So to the donor, they may donate $50 to you, but their write-off is $25 because they got a benefit of a $25 dinner. So again, that's important when you're reporting back at the end of the year. So make sure that donated funds go in the right place. Don't call funds going into your 501c4 as donated, because you as a 501c4 cannot accept donated funds. We can accept funds for advertising, sponsorship, stuff like that, but again, we cannot accept donated funds. And most businesses, if, you know, they'll write a check and we'll call it advertising and we write it off under advertising. So there's a way that businesses can do that. And if you have or need any more information, let me know on that particular item. With respect to donated funds as well, if you get funds that someone says, hey, I want to donate these funds, however, I only want you to use it for scholarships for high school students. So when that money comes in, that money has to be what we call designated or restricted. You might hear either one of those 2 words. And what that means is that those funds are coming in. They need to come in to your bank account. You would put them on your income statement as income, and then you would pull them out and put them on the balance sheet as a restricted expense. It can only be spent for what that person has appropriated it for. So some clubs will say, we'll take restricted funds, but it has to be approved by the board, and other clubs, they'll just take it, and that's fine. But remember that when you bring those in, it has to be spent for that item. So if you get restricted funds that come in for a certain event and that event doesn't happen, legally, you cannot just take those funds and say, well, I'm going to use it for this other event over here. If you want to use them for that other event, you're going to have to contact the donor and say, we did not use it for this event. Do we have your permission to use it for X event? If they say yes, then you need to send them something in writing saying, you know, pursuant to our conversation, thank you for allowing us to use the funds restricted for X for, you know, Y project, because that's just how it works. You have to use it for what they say. And then, of course, at the end of the year, don't forget that you need to send out letters to anyone who has donated to your 501c3. You send them out letters providing them that donation information, and make sure it has your name, address, and your tax ID number. And then always put at the bottom there a little disclaimer about, you know, that you're providing this, but, you know, they should speak to their tax advisor for further information, just as a disclaimer, because we don't want to tell them that their donation is tax deductible or not. We need to leave that up to them and their tax advisor. Okay, again, make sure you're registered with the appropriate regulatory agencies, IRS, FTB, the registration of charitable trusts. You should, again, if you're registered and a corporation in the state of California, you will be registered with the Secretary of State as well, and have to do the registration of charitable trusts. If you're under the group exemption, you would file the IRS and the federal franchise tax board returns. Make sure you're filing them all on time and appropriately. Don't forget, because it can be costly. Like, for example, the statement of information due every other year. If you do not file it, it's a $250 penalty. So you want to make sure that you file that. The same with the registration of charitable trusts, and there are penalties for not filing it. And under nonprofit regulations, any penalties or interests that are incurred by a nonprofit are the responsibility of the individual directors. So legally, the nonprofit should not pay for any penalties and interests. Now, I'm not going to say that some of them don't do that. I'm just telling you that's what the IRS regulations state. So try to keep it clean and make sure that you don't get yourself in that situation. And then, of course, any contracts that you have, make sure that they're written and that they're signed, and that you keep the documentation in your files. I know that sounds crazy, but there are clubs out there that do events, and it's all on a handshake, and then something goes awry and they run into an issue. So again, for clarity purpose and for protection of you and your members and the organization, make sure everything is written and is signed in a contractual format. Again, make sure you have an independent review of the financials, manage your foundation according to the laws. Make sure your semi-annual reports are reviewed with the secretary to make sure everything is up to date, and you get those folks purged off by June 30 and December 31st. Those are the 2 days, because RI sends out their SARs effective July 1 and January 1. You want to ensure that all the paper and electronic files are kept and organized properly during your year. Retain everything and pass it along to your successor. Some clubs have one person who is responsible for holding all the secretarial and treasurer documents, the historical documents, whatever your process is, just make sure that it's known and in place and that everything is there. Participate in a visioning session so that you can ensure your club has a plan to secure your financial stability. And then, of course, make sure you have adequate insurance coverage for your events and your board. Obviously, through Rotary International, there is insurance coverage available. You can access that through My Rotary on the RI website. But I do encourage individuals, depending on what your events are, to look out there to get your own additional insurance. For example, if you're serving alcohol, you may want to go ahead and get an additional rider to cover that, or if you're putting on a parade or something like that. So you can get it out there. There is a site that I use for the district. It's RV Nuccio, and they have great event insurance, and it's an excellent price. And you can sign on right away, and you literally sign on, fill out all the information, pay for it, and you've got your coverage as long as it takes you to do that online. So that's a recommendation for you there if you have that. Okay, winding up here sort of with our DDF grant request. There's been a lot of discussion about that. So let me clarify it for you. So what happens now is the DRF, who in your year, starting next year under Barry, is going to be Steve Yeager. And so what will happen is after all the DDF is approved, he will send a listing to me. And then at that point, I will be, well, before that point, I'll be going on and making sure any clubs that are registered with the state are active with the Secretary of State. You have to be active. If you are suspended in any way, whether it be FTB suspended, SOS, which is the Secretary of State suspended, unfortunately, you would not be eligible to get your grant. So we would certainly help you get out of that status if you needed that. Dues are paid with Rotary International, dues are paid with district, and that you have a direct deposit authorization form on file and that it's current. That's a real big one. We, in the last year and a half, have been transitioning everybody over to get everybody on direct deposit, so we don't have to send out checks and all of that good stuff. If you change your bank account, you need to let us know, because we do not go back and check every single year that you've got the right bank account. And usually bank accounts don't change that often. But if your bank account has changed or you are unsure that we have the right bank account, you can always call us and we can verify for you the bank account that we have on file. So DDF will be automatically direct deposited. Once we get that listing, we'll send it direct deposit. DDF always goes to your club. Okay, DDF cannot be put into a foundation account because DDF comes from Rotary International, who has under them clubs, not foundations. So if you're using this money for a fundraiser and you're doing out of the foundation, you know, you're welcome. Once it's deposited to your club account, you can transfer it to your foundation, whatever you'd like to do. But it will go to your club account. And when the transaction happens, the email that we have on file that's filled out on the authorization form is the one that will get the notice. So when we send it, you'll get a notice. It may go into your spam file. It comes from Intuit, and it will tell you a vendor deposit has been made for X amount, and it will tell you what date, so you can check that against your bank account and see that that deposit has been made. If once you complete the form, you return it to my email address, which is listed right there for you, the 5330treasurer@gmail.com. So once that all happens, that's taken care of. If you need anything or have any questions on your DDF as far as depositing, excuse me, I'm happy to help you with that. If it's a question on the amount that you received, you would need to address that with Steve Yeager. Okay, this is a copy, excuse me, of the check request form. So if you need a check request from district, just email me, let me know. I can send this out to you. So if you're requesting reimbursement for something from the district, please fill this out, send it back to us, and you know, check mark the box if you want direct deposit. Of course, we prefer it that way. Or we can certainly mail you a check, tell us what it's for, and attach whatever necessary receipts that you need to have. And down there at the bottom is the mailing address, and of course our fax number and our phone number if you have any questions. And this is a sample of something that you could use for your own club. This is what we use for district, so that every expense that comes in has a check request, and we have it all documented, so it's very straightforward when our books are audited. Okay, and the last slide here, this is my information, address, work phone, cell phone, fax number, and our email. Best way to get a hold of me always is on my cell phone, and please feel free to call it. I do texting, so that works for me as well. And when you do, please leave your name and your club, because I get these random texts and I'm like, who is this and where are they from? So if you could do that, that would be great. I do try to return all my calls, texts, and messages within 24 hours. I try to do them the same day, but I sometimes can't always get to that. So that's it. And Rudy, I'm ready for any questions.
Okay, you want to do a stop share there? There we go.
Yep.
So we've got, and if you have additional questions here, please type them in the chat box. It's in the bottom center of your screen, so we can do those. Somebody said that they thought there was an earthquake, but they thought it was just all this load that you put in everybody's brains here. They have brain overload that kind of shook up across the district, I think. But great information. We had a question on whether you could share your actual PowerPoint presentation. We are recording this meeting, and it will be put up in our district YouTube channel, so that you can look at it again and or share it. There was a question, Jamie, and I think you covered it, on whether they could scan in and do electronic copies of receipts and checks and a variety of things, paperwork, or they needed hard copies. And I believe you said electronic now was acceptable. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, I would recommend that you back up your computer, or you have shared that with another person in case your computer crashes, so you got a backup for those files. There's a, if you could give again the name of that insurance carrier that you mentioned, if they need event insurance or board member insurance, anything extra?
Yes, it's RV, R as in Robert, V as in Victor, Nuccio, Nuccio. And if you put that into Google, it should bring it up right away for you. His website, rvnuccio.com, and just click on that, and you tell them what kind of event it is, and you just go right from there. It's really easy, very easy, menu driven.
Okay. Tita put down here, do we have to get an authorization for every fundraiser?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
Tita, why don't you unmute yourself and ask it directly exactly what you're looking for?
You were saying that we need to register, or to get authorization for some kind of fundraise.
Oh, if you want to do a raffle, specifically a raffle in the state of California as a nonprofit, you have to register with the Attorney General in the state of California. So that's if you're going to do a raffle.
But this is for every raffle, only one time during the year?
Any raffle that you want to perform, you have to have an authorization. And the authorization goes from September to August 31st. It's a very odd year. So.
Okay. We have a question on the tax reporting year in filing with the IRS or the state. Is that the rotary year or the calendar year?
You file your tax returns on the fiscal year. You have to double check, but most all clubs and foundations run from July 1 to June 30. They're set up to correspond with the rotary year. Now, that's not to say that you have something different, but everyone I've seen is on a fiscal year.
That's good. So that's my broker calling.
Yeah, it was a good day.
Yeah, tell me we were done. So Jamie, this has been great. If you've seen Jamie's email address and you've got her cell phone number, please feel free to reach out to Jamie at any time. She's very happy to answer your questions and help you make your job as easy as possible, even though certainly in our clubs, just depending on the size of clubs and whether you just have a club account or whether you actually have another 501c3 that you're dealing with, and some of these other issues, we want to make sure everybody's able to handle all their affairs, the accounting side and money side properly. And again, if you have any questions at all, feel free to reach out to Jamie. Jamie, thank you so much for making this presentation.
Jamie, I got a quick question. This is Ed Ritter. What about RILA deposits that were made?
You talking about for this year?
Yeah, this year.
So the RILA deposits that were made is your question, are we refunding them? Is that your question?
Refunding them or applying them against next year or whatever?
As it stands right now, they'll be applied to next year.
Okay.
And I think Barry is on. I don't know, Barry, if you wanted to add more to that, but we're keeping them and applying them to next year at this point in time.
That's a good idea. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Jamie, and a wonderful job, I will say.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, Ed and everybody, we are meeting again this weekend regarding what we're doing with Pride and RILA moving forward. But any club that's used DDF or cash, because we'll be giving credits towards future RILAs, and we're determining when that will be. The money was spent securing the RILA to start with, so it's not like we have the cash to give back. But there'll be some more information coming at the rest of the assembly, and then we'll probably send out an email to everybody to let them know what's going on. Thanks for the question.
All right. I think that's a wrap. Tomorrow night we have a session on international service, and then on Saturday morning for the secretaries, club secretaries, and then follow that schedule. If you or some other members of your club are signed up, we have 9 more sessions to go, including grant management, which will be on the 20th of June as our last final wrap up. So Elizabeth, thanks for putting all this together. Barry, thanks for allowing us to do this, and I hope everybody has a good evening. And Elizabeth, you have any words?
No, thank you all for attending. I appreciate it. This was the largest session I think we've had. We had 65 registrants and 56 attendees.
Nice.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everybody. Wonderful job, Elizabeth, Rudy.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Rudy. Great
Okay.
job, Rudy.
Thank you, Rudy.
Oh, no.
Thank you, Rudy.
Thanks, Jamie.
Thank you, Barry.
Thank you, Jamie.
Good night, all.
Yeah, thank you guys all. Appreciate it.
Good night.